we are really blessed to have Swami Mahamedhanandaji with us for this valedictory session. At the outset, the sincere the pranams, Ashtanga pranams, and apologies to Swamiji, because this was scheduled at 4 p.m. and then we are here at 4:45 because of these deliberations and discussions which are very critical to the topic of dhyana. Yes. So our sincere thanks and also apologies for the delay, Swamiji.
No issue at all.
And words of introductions about Swami Mahamedhanandaji. Swami Mahamedhanandaji is a sannyasi of the Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission, a monastic order centered around Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and established by Swami Vivekananda in 1897. Swamiji has been involved in value education activities for the last 2 decades. Initially, he served in Belur Math, the headquarters of the order, and then for over 9 years, he served in Ramakrishna Mission Vidya Mandira, a fully residential UG to PG college for men in Howrah, West Bengal, as hostel superintendent and then joint controller of examinations. From August 2016, he is serving as the editor of the Vedanta Kesari, a cultural and spiritual monthly English magazine published from Sri Ramakrishna Math, Chennai, since I think 1914, more than a century old, prestigious heritage kind of magazine journal, spiritual cultural journal. He's also the mentor of students of the Vivekananda Circle of IIT Madras, whom he addresses every Sunday. Thank you very much, Swamiji, for accepting
Thank you for inviting
our request and for being here to bless us with your valedictory address. Thank you, Swamiji.
Yeah. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. My pranams to all the eminent scholars, and my thanks at the very outset to Dr. Nagaraj Paturi and Dr. Jayaraman for inviting me to this webinar. It has been a feast of 2 days, but truthfully I could attend only today, and the whole day I didn't know how it passed. One after another, there is a succession of ideas and lot of thought to reflect on. I'll be presenting a brief idea of what I see from my tradition as meditation, and just as a conclusion to probably where we should go, a pointer towards that. I begin with a quotation of Swami Vivekananda about who is man, because when we are talking about meditation or this technique or that tradition, we should never forget that it is all about the man with whom we are talking. Everything else makes sense only when you keep this central figure in the focus. It is about the man. It is about me that everything is being discussed. Swamiji writes, man is a compound of animality, humanity, and divinity. This is well known to us. Now, Pashutva, we function from the Pashutva level when our daily life is dominated by our subconscious mind. And this is in the form of instincts. Instincts which draws to experience the body and the senses and the sense objects. And in simple terms, we classify it as interest in food, sleep, and sex. A person may be very intelligent, very erudite, and still for all that be a Pashu. Because his dominant instinct is to fulfill these needs, the animal needs. We function from the Manushatva level when we awaken to higher thoughts. Sri Ramakrishna says, Jar man hosh hoyeche shei manush. He whose mind has awakened to higher thoughts, only he can be called a human being. Now, what these higher thoughts, again, that can be a big discussion on that. Higher thoughts is about the fundamental questions. What is life? Who am I? They finally end there. But the academic and other interests we have in other apara vidya, that also is higher thoughts on it. Now this is a life where we are guided by our conscious mind. In the Pashutva level, the dominant part is the subconscious mind, and in the Manushatva level, it is the conscious mind. And the conscious mind functioning through Viveka, it is only when a person is exercising his Viveka and Vairagya can he claim to be a human being, or else he is just a well-dressed, intelligent animal. Daivatva. Finally, we function from the Daivatva level when our thoughts and actions reflect our inner true nature, our divinity, which manifests as love, peace, understanding, and acceptance. This level of the mind is called the superconscious mind, where the mind perceives life, the truths of life, intuitively. At the lower end, it is instinct. At the higher end, it is intuition. This intuition, it awakens when the mind becomes pure. Though we say it is a subconscious mind, conscious mind, superconscious mind, we know it is just one mind. Everything is the mind. It is only the question of how pure it is, how the color of the gunas, whether it is tamoguna, rajoguna, or sattva-guna, that makes the difference in the inner divinity manifesting itself. So rising from this animal to the human level and from the human to the divine level is what we call spirituality or spiritual progress. It is not memorizing some shlokas or some verses as some people do, or believing in some traditions and practicing them. It is how have you evolved? And helping people to evolve so and function as divine beings was the ideal of Swami Vivekananda. In one of the first few letters that he wrote to Sister Nivedita, who was then still known as Margaret Noble, Swami Vivekananda writes, "My ideal indeed can be put into a few words, and that is to preach unto mankind their divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life. It is not just kala, it is action. In every movement of life, can I manifest the inner divinity? That is the true test of success in meditation." And Swamiji says, this is the ideal I have in my life. Remind people of their divinity, and he gives, and Sri Ramakrishna also gives so many parables for that. The lion and the lion cub, like that, multiple parables to help us. It is there in all traditions. Discover your inner divinity. It is not something you attain. You are that already. It is only you have forgotten, you have to uncover it. Now, meditation is the means to achieve this evolution. Meditation helps us to attain a direct, immediate experience of our fundamental Swarupa as Satchit Ananda. There are different opinions about this according to the tradition we belong to, but this is the generally accepted Vedantic tradition, our Advaitic tradition. And we are fortunate that our Sanatana Dharma gives us such a big choice, multiple techniques to go within. Now, to talk about consciousness, one of our very erudite Swami Tapasyananji, he explains it like this. Consciousness is like a line with two ends, A and B. A stands for the subject side, which is aware of the other side, that is B. Now, this B side continuously transforms itself into various modes and images under the stimulation from the external world and also the awakening of memories within. There is a continuous transformation happening in that end of consciousness, the side B. This is influenced by the world outside and the world within. And the A side of consciousness is a witness to that. In our ordinary state of living, this subjective side of consciousness, the A side of the line, is very weak. And because it is weak, it becomes totally identified with B, the object, the form-taking end of consciousness. And we thus remain totally identified with the body, mind, ego complex, and therefore enjoy or suffer the experiences that it begets. Now, meditation, whatever be the technique, is the process of stopping this image-forming tendency of B, the side B of consciousness. And how is it done? It is done by shutting off the stimulations of external objects and also the internal memory impressions and imaginations, and then turning that mind within Avruta Chakshu, turning it within to look at its source, A. This is what, in general, whatever be the technique, the attempt is this, to turn within, to stop that multiple forms, tendency of creating multiple forms, to stop that and turn it inside. That is the whole point. Now, the biggest challenge in turning inward is overcoming all the subjective impressions or samskaras accumulated over many lifetimes. We may go into a lonely spot and say, no, outside world is not disturbing me. But then the inner world is the biggest disturbance. Now, this inner obstacle is overcome only with a dharmic life. Meaningful meditation is possible only when our life is established in dharma. And this practice of dharma is multifarious because it is interpreted differently by different traditions. But they anyhow include the yamas and niyamas, viveka, vairagya, shatsampatti, mumukshutva, bhakti, whatever be the tradition, whatever be the practices they prescribe, it is for establishing us in the practice of dharma. And this practice of dharma is the foundation on which any meditation practice technique will be fruitful. You cannot remove this meditation technique outside the dharma and say this is just a technique anyone can practice, whatever may be your lifestyle and whatever may be your desires and whatever may be your actions, you can progress with this technique. That doesn't work. Now, without this struggle to practice and live these values, any talk of meditation will be only academic interest, discussions, or it will be a fruitless effort. And more dangerous, without being rooted in dharma, if someone starts talking about techniques, meditation techniques, it will result in the commodification of meditation, where techniques are presented as lifestyle package and they are taught for a hefty fee. We are seeing that happening in India. And they become very big personalities with some new techniques, new names discovered by them and sold for a hefty price, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And every stage you have to pay more, shell out more. Now, the true meditative state is described as that where we have an unbroken awareness of the divinity within, of our inner Daivatva. And in that awareness, in the light of that awareness, we see the same divinity in the multifarious world outside. This is what is the proof of meditation, the success of meditation? Because people hallucinate a lot, even when we are conscious. And when we meditate, it happens even more. We had a devotee in one of our centers who came and claimed that she was having Jyoti Darshan when she came for morning meditation. The Pujari heard her out and he had no such opinion of her. So he asked, how is your Jyoti Darshan? Please explain it to me. And when does it happen? She said, when I sit and after some time, I have this kind of a light. Then he explained to her, that is the time I switch on the bulb in front of you. And that is the light you are seeing inside. So there can be all kinds of hallucinating things like that in meditations especially. So there is definite proof for your progress in meditation. The proof of meditation is how much better, kinder, efficient and enlightened human being you have turned out to be. It is not how many hours you sat. Once Swami Brahmananji, he was the first president of the Ramakrishna order and brother disciple of Swami Vivekananda. He wanted to test the depth of the sadhu's morning meditation. So he ordered each sadhu to peel a potato and bring it to him. Because sadhus do the morning vegetable cleaning and then cutting, sadhus themselves do that in Belumat. Brahmananji checked those potatoes and then he held up one and declared that the peeler of that potato had had a deep meditation that day. And this person was Swami Shuddhananda. He was a disciple of Swami Vivekananda. And later he became another president of the order. Brahmananji noticed that Shuddhananda had removed the skin of the potato so neatly that no flesh was wasted. We simply say yoga karmasu kaushalam. That kaushalam, how does it come? And it has to be shown, not in talking. Now again, the progress in meditation is not to be seen, as I said, in subjective experiences, but also in how we connect and respond to the world around us. You meditate for 1 hour morning, 1 hour evening, and the slightest provocation brings out the Durvasa in you. And you meditate regularly, but you don't talk with your brother, your parents, or your wife, or your husband for last 2 months because you still hold that anger. You have a grudge. And yet you say, no, I am progressing in spirituality. How can that be? As the meditator gradually uncovers his own true nature, he will see the same divinity in all people around him, in all the living beings around him. Therefore, Swami Vivekananda wrote to the Maharaja of Mysore from America in 1895, "My noble prince, they alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive." When you see the same divinity in people around you, that inner worship manifests outside as Shivagnane Jiva Seva. That is the phrase Swami Vivekananda coined. So getting out into the world and doing service is very much a part of sadhana. Serving the world, in fact, acts as a touchstone. It reveals the Adishad Vargas that lurk in the inmost depths of our heart. How much ever we may talk, it is only when you come out and serve fellow human beings, you will know where you stand. Sitting in a cave, everyone is a Paramahamsa. Only then we will know how effective our meditation has been. And this does not depend on the efficacy of the technique. It depends on the practitioner. Again, on the eve of leaving for the West the second time in June 1899, Swami Vivekananda called all the young sadhus of Belumat and he addressed them. And part of what he said is this: you must try, he told them, you must try to combine in your life immense idealism with immense practicality. This is where I think Sanatana Dharma failed. Immense idealism with immense practicality. We lost the practicality part. You must be prepared to go deep into meditation now. And the next moment, you must be ready to go and cultivate these fields. You must be prepared to explain the difficult intricacies of the Shastras now. And the next moment, to go and sell the produce of the fields in the market. This is the integrated personality that Swamiji wanted. So meditation is not withdrawing from the world, as it sometimes is understood. It is a deeper and more divine kind of interaction and connection with the world. Now, this excellent two-day webinar, it should motivate us to explore how we can revive these traditions among the general public. So many traditions, so many scholars have presented the depth and the wealth of knowledge in it. Should it remain in webinars and in books? How can we bring it out? How to introduce these meditation traditions and techniques to our students, our teachers, our administrators, our professionals, whether it is a city driver, bus driver, or auto driver, or an IT person. How do we tell them? How do we teach it to the housewives, the farmers? If we don't think on this line, and if we don't make an attempt, these great traditions will remain only with a small number of people, and it will remain in books. And a country will never be nourished unless the majority of people are given that. It is the best nutrition that we can give our country. It's a malnutrition country anyway. This at least we can give. There is something here. And this is something we are lacking also. Because we don't give, others are giving second-rate, third-rate things, techniques, and people are lapping it up. Because this is not being shared with them. This is not being taught to them. Now, how do we do that? Before that, we should keep in mind, there cannot be any one tradition or technique advocated as the best. One dress fit for all. That can never be Sanatana Dharma's voice. Swami Vivekananda says, inspiration never filters down to society through one personality. It can never filter down through one personality, however great that personality may be. And to claim that what the personality has told is for truth, for eternity, and no other interpretation can be, is cause for all dissension and the breakdown as we have experienced in our Sanatana Dharma. When we talk about a supreme being as personal, Saguna Brahman, he is not personal in the sense as we are persons. He is a presence, Sat, Chit, Ananda. It is that which knows us, which responds to us, which loves us, and which can be loved. I, as an individual, can only be an individual, but Saguna Brahman can manifest himself, or you want to call it herself, as any individuality, in any form of murti, in any incarnation. That is Saguna Brahman. So there should still we have, Sri Ramakrishna also makes fun of this, and he tells so many stories we have. You all are familiar with it. Rama and Shiva once were feeling bored and they decided to entertain themselves with a small fight. And when these two started fighting, all the Vanaras and the Rakshasa Ganas also jumped in because their masters were fighting. After some time, Rama and Shiva said, okay, enough, let's have some relaxing tea, maybe a cup of tea. They stopped fighting, but these two have not stopped fighting. The Vanaras and the Rakshasa Ganas. That's still continuing. Still we have this saying, no, my tradition is better. My tradition is one step higher. As long as we continue to think like that, we do a great disservice to our Sanatana Dharma. So how do we then spread these different traditions? It cannot be one tradition. We have to preserve all of them. And the formal education system does not give us a scope to teach this traditional method of meditation and dharmic life. The dharmic life, which is foundation to meditation, this will not be allowed to be taught. Even with the new national education policy, it will not allow us to teach it because there will be heavy, big resistance for that. So one approach can be that each tradition can design a process wherein its followers will learn the essentials of dharma and the process of meditation whenever they visit their temples, whenever they observe their community festivals, and whenever they conduct their community rituals. There can be some like a volunteer of dharma, a cultural volunteer. In each group, in each community, if some people are trained by the leaders of that community, those who are practicing it, and the scholars come together and say, this is the scripture, this is what it is, now here are people practicing, let us learn and teach our own community people what is our heritage. If we don't do this, and if we don't bring it down to the level of the common people, we lose everything and it will remain only in libraries. Now that effort can be done by each one of us individually. It doesn't have to be done by some foundation. Each one of us, we can do that by taking interest. And this can be supplemented by having such online satsangs for followers of each individual tradition. So the whole community can come together. It can be a radio talk, it can be a community talk. So we'll have to work out how it filters down to the common mass. And I hope and pray the Divine Mother will guide us all in this. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Ashtanga pranams again, Swamiji. That was Hitam Manoharicha Durlabham Vachaha, beneficial and lucid advices, words of advices. And as Vachaspati Mishra would say about Shankaracharya's Bhashya, Prasanna Gambhiram, Bhashyam Prasanna Gambhiram. So it was both Prasanna and also Gambhira, the thoughts, the guidance on dharma, proof of progress in meditation and service, how to meditate, integration into life, that is idealism and practicality. So all these are very important points to be pondered over by each of the speakers who had presented their thoughts, and also all the participants who are here from across the globe. We express immense gratitude and pranams for your presence and the others. Thank you very much, Swamiji.